Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of GDDV 106 Development Concepts. My name is Kasanas. Well, guys, we are almost finished. We've gotten to the point where we're ready to start working on our power-ups. All that preliminary stuff is done, and hopefully it was super helpful. Obviously, that preliminary stuff is going to go a lot farther than just power-ups. However, we're ready to move on to that point now. So, guys, we're doing great. Today, asset development, and we're actually doing a power-up of some kind, or a pickup of some kind, that is. All right, guys, so creating power-ups. Let's get started. So we finally made it. We're going to create ourselves a pickup, actually. We're not even going to do a power-up in this, just a pickup so you can see how it's done. Once you understand what we're doing, afterwards it's super easy to make it a power-up or a pickup or anything else that you'd like to do. All right, so it's a couple of things before we actually move into Unity, because that's where most of this is going to take place. I just want to talk a little bit about the idea of design behind a power-up or pickup. It's really important that we understand what a pickup is. It's something that a player can interact with. And we have to make sure that whenever we design ourselves our pickup, that the player has an indication that it's something that they should be interacting with. And there's a ton of different ways that we can do so through the actual design of the pickup or power-up. So by making it look like a particular thing, that's called affordance. By making it look like a particular thing that the player wants to interact with, they're going to interact with it. Something that's going to make it noticeable or stand out from the other things around the player is also pretty important. And normally I would add in things like animation or particle systems or something like that to make the pickup or power up more evident, but we haven't actually studied that yet, so I'm not actually going to do it in this particular episode. We're going to take a look at that much later on. So when you guys are going about thinking about your power-ups and your pickups for your game, try and think in those terms, all right? What is it that might make it noticeable to your player? What is it that's going to draw your player's attention to that particular item? What is it that's going to make that item stand out from a non-interactive object that's located in the screen? Okay, with that said, guys, let's head over to Unity and take a look at how we're going to build ourselves a power-up with what we've learned up until now. Okay, guys, here we are back in Unity, Dev Concepts, Week 7, and we've got ourselves a really simple scene here. If I just hit play, you'll see what it is. I've got myself a head. That's going to be our player. It can move around. We already took a look at something like this previously. In the upper left-hand corner, I've got myself a UI element. It has a star and a value of 0. Now, that's because we don't have any stars. And what we're going to do now is create ourselves a star pickup that's going to give our players points. That's the plan. As I mentioned before in the earlier section of this particular video, we're not actually going to take a look at feedback, and we're not going to actually take a look at things like, attracting our players' attention, not the cinematography of anything. We're just going to have a star, pick up the star, and give ourselves points. Later on, though, you are going to really need to concentrate on the idea of feedback. Let the player know that they've done something important. They're going to have a little bit of feedback here, right? They're going to have the fact that their points increment. But that's the extent of it. Normally, you'd have like some type of reward, like a particle system and a sound that goes off to let the player know that they've done something awesome. We're not going to look at that today. All we're going to take a look at is building the star and going through and giving ourselves points. Now, obviously, we're going to need to build this pickup, so let's head on over into our sprites and find ourselves what we've got. I've got myself a star right here, and I'm just going to drag it in for now. I'll just drag it in here, and we'll zero that out, actually. We'll put it right at the 0, so reset. Now, our star is huge. It's really big compared to the player, so I'm going to shrink it down, all right? So I'm going to go to my scale, and let's just make it 0.15 maybe. Is that going to be good? And 0.15. Is that going to be good? That's not so bad, actually. We'll use that. It's a little bit small, maybe 0.2, but I'm pretty lazy this morning. I don't feel like adjusting those numbers. So, guys, this is going to be our pickup. This is going to be what our player can pick up. We're going to build the hierarchy first, and I know right now I've just dragged this and dropped it into the scene, and you could absolutely do that if you really wanted to. Just drag it and drop it in the scene and make this into a pickup. But there's some things I like to do first. I'm going to add myself an empty game object, so game object create empty, and I'm going to call this my star base. And I like to create my hierarchy like this. I'm going to reset this so it's at 0, 0, 0, and I'm going to drag my star and drop it off on the star base. And the reason why I'm going to do this is later on, if I decide to add animation or adjust the positioning of my star, I can do so. I can adjust the star itself, or I can add animation to the star itself. If I tried to do that without this actual hierarchy, what would happen is the star would assume that the world origin is the origin of the star, and all the animation that took place would then be in relation to that origin, to the world origin. By setting up the hierarchy like this, later on when I add animation, it's going to say, okay, star base is actually my origin, and all the animation will be in relation to that. It's going to allow you to drag your objects into the scene and maintain your objects in the scene. We're not going to look at animation right now, but I thought I'd set this up properly just to make sure that it's working that way. Okay, so here's Starbase, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn on this little icon here so we can actually see it. And there's my Starbase. So let's just drag it down for now. And we're not going to leave it here. Let's just drag it down for now, right about here. And what I'm going to do is grab star and drag it up a little bit so I can kind of say, well, this is how high I want my particular pickup to be. I'm just adjusting it in the scene. Later on, when I come in, if I make a prefab, I'll just put my star base on all the platforms like this, and the star will be of an appropriate height. And all the animation, like I said, would take place around the origin of star base. Okay, so now that we have that, what I am going to do is I need some way to allow this particular object to interact with my player. And we already know what we have to do. We're going to add ourselves a collider. So I'm going to go to the star itself. I'm going to head down to Add Component. I'm going to find... I'm just going to get rid of this for now. Get rid of that for now, and hit return. Add component, new script. Why is it not doing that? There we go. Sorry, guys, I am super tired today. Anyway, let's go into our Physics 2D. Let's find ourselves an appropriate collider. That's what we want to add a collider to this particular object. And in this case, I'm not worried about the hitbox of this object as long as it kind of takes the general shape of the star or my pickup, then that's perfectly fine. So I think I'm going to add myself a circle collider. I can adjust the size of this if I want to, but I think that's probably fine right now for this particular demonstration. Okay, now I don't want to use a collider itself. I want it to be a trigger to make sure that my player can pass through the star. Okay, and that's all I have to do as far as building this object. If I'm not adding anything in like audio or any type of kind of feedback options, that's all I really need to do. My player can now interact with that. My player has a rigid body and a collider. My star has a collider. Those two are going to be able to talk together. And we talked about this idea previously. Whenever my player enters into that particular trigger, I have an option to issue code, particularly an on trigger enter. So we're going to add that to our star right now. A particular add component. Let's add ourselves a brand new script. So head down until you see new script. And let's add a new script that we're going to call our star controller. Okay, we're going to give it a name that we can figure out later. Star controller. And once it actually builds up in here, takes a long time. There we go. I'm going to double click and open up Visual Studio. Okay, here inside of Visual Studio, I don't think I need start, and I don't think I need update, so I'm simply going to get rid of it. Now, we decided that our star controller is going to give our player points. So let's create ourselves a public integer, or you can use a float depending on how your point system is working. I'm just going to use a public integer that I will call value. It doesn't matter what you call it as long as you can call it something that is pretty reasonable. And I'm just going to add in here a default value of 1 for now. We can adjust that value later on. Make sure yeah, 1 is fine. Make sure that you can adjust that value because it's public. So later on, if you decide to balance your game and give more points for a particular pickup, you absolutely can. So I've got this public value in here, and I want to increment the value of my score. Now, I have a couple of options here. I can either allow my individual pickups to manipulate the score, or I can keep the score in a different location. So, for example, a centralized location like my player. And I think I'm going to use that second option. I'm going to make a centralized location. I could go through and make a static value called score, and I could then I could update that value, and it would update the appropriate text box within Unity. But instead, we're going to explore the idea of speaking directly through a public function to our player and allow our player to handle things like health and it's the score and that kind of thing. So in doing so here, we're just kind of looking at this in general terms. All right, so what do I need? I need to have a private void. So I need a void function. And in this particular case, I want my player immediately upon entering into the trigger to trigger the events that are going to occur. So I'm going to use an on trigger. enter 2D. So that's the option right here. All right, and it takes in a collider 2D. We already talked about this in a different video. I don't like to use the word collision, in all honesty. I like to use other. I'm old school in that way. So other is referring to the collider that it is interacted with. Now, what do we want to do with that other collider? Well, first of all, we want to make sure that the other collider is actually our player. If we go back to Unity later on, we can tag our player with the tag player, and then anything else that actually enters into this trigger will not have any effect on the pickup itself. So I'm going to say if other.tag equals quotations player, then I know it's actually my player and I want something to occur. Now, what is that something that I want to occur? Well, as I've already mentioned, I'm going to have a public function that's going to track my player's score. So I'm going to have to go back into Unity and I'm going to have to create that particular public function. So I'm going to file save this and I'm going to head back into Unity. Okay, here inside of Unity, we are going to head over to Kasana's Happy, that's our player, and we need to add a new script in here. I think we're going to anyway. We currently have an input script in here, and that is in charge of our movement. And really, if this was good design, guys, we would go through and we'd define all of our systems. Okay, I need combat system, I need a crafting system, I need an input system, I need a health system. All that kind of stuff is what I need, right? And I think we'll kind of break it up just for consistency's sake, so I can say this is how good design works. So I'm not going to actually add anything to my input script. I'm going to leave it. That's in charge of movement. I'm going to leave it. So what I am going to need then is a brand new script on my player that's going to be in charge of scoring. Maybe we combine scoring and health. I often do that. But, you know, let's just, for now, add a component. And let's go down and add a brand new script. And let's call this script let's call it our player health script. All right, so if later on I do a video on player health, I can do it. So player health controller, we'll call it. All right, and we're going to add to that our score as well. So I'm going to create this, create an add. All right, for some reason it bounces back in here. It doesn't open it, but it bounces back into Visual Studio. That bothers me. All right, so let's go in here and double click on our player health. All right, there we are. We're back in Visual Studio. Awesome. And our player health is not going to need the update. I don't think I'm going to require the update. So for now, I'm gonna remove it. What I am going to need is a couple of things. I do want this particular script to be in charge of my score, right? That's what we've decided. So I'm going to add an int I'm going to call score. I'm actually pretty lazy right now about all of my naming conventions. I'm all over the place right now, and I apologize, guys. I should probably be more consistent in my naming conventions. We'll call it int score, and let's actually set it equal to 0 just to begin with, just to make sure that our player starts with no score. They don't get anything just for showing up, right? There's no participation trophy here. So we'll start off with our int score, and let's add in here a public accessor function. So we'll call it our public, and let's call this, it's a void function, and let's just call it update. Let's call it update score. All right, update score. And it's going to actually take one parameter. If later on we decide to add different pickups and they each have different values, we want to make sure that we can update it with an appropriate value. So let's just call this int, and let's just call it value. For simplicity's sake, call it value. And let's add in our braces. Now, what we want to happen simply is that we increment score. So our score plus equals our value. All right, so that's going to add into our value of score, which is great. We also want this particular function to update our text, our UI text. So we're going to have to go up here and say using Unity engine.ui. Bam. All right, and that's going to give us access to the text on the UI as well. So let's head down here. Actually, let's declare it first. So I'm going to declare it as a public variable, a public text variable that we'll call our player score. All right, score. And maybe I'll even call it player score text just to make sure I know what it is. All right, player score text. And right now, what we're going to do is in the start function, let's actually set it to 0 to make sure that it's been initialized as well. So our player health controller, no, our player score text. dot text is going to be equal to, let's just set it equal to 0. Okay, perfect. Now, so that'll initialize it to 0. Great. Let's go in here into our update score and change that value. And obviously, we want it to reflect our current score. So our player score text dot text is going to equal our current score. And we'll say toString to make sure that we are passing in the appropriate value. So there we go. That's going to update our text as well. So we should actually see the value on the screen. Let's file save this. We'll just save all, and let's head back to our star controller. Now that we know the public name is update score. Let's go back to our star controller, and let's take a look on other. Why are you way over there, you? Let's tab over. I don't want that. Why does it say object? All right, let's get rid of this. Okay. Oh, why you bother me today? All right. Okay. There we go. Let's take a look at our other .game object, and we need to find ourselves the player health controller and find that particular public function. I could go through and make it my reference to at the top. We're just going to do it the lazy way here. We're going to search for it every single time. So on the other .game object .get component, and this is making the assumption as well that it's on the same, like the top hierarchy, same hierarchy layer as the collider. It is. This is not the best way of doing it, simply because you should probably check to see if it's actually there. But in this particular case, we're doing it quick and dirty, right? So we're looking for our player health. Our player health controller. That's what we want to find. And once we found it, we can access the proper public function. And I've completely forgotten what it was called. What did I call it? Update? I think update score. Perfect. So let's go in here and find ourselves update score, which is right there. And it takes an integer value, and we're going to pass in value. And that's going to allow us to pass in the value of this current object. Now, we want to make sure that our player can't keep running over the star over and over again. They can't go out, come back and get all these points. Maybe you want to, but I don't want to. So what I'm going to make sure I do is destroy this object as soon as we're done. All right, so I'm just going to destroy my game object. All right, and this is going to remove the star from the screen, so the player can only hit it once. And that's all we need to do. This is all we're going to need to do. Let me file save everything here. File save all. And let's head back into Unity. Okay, here on Unity, we have to update a couple of things. Kasana's happy. Let's make sure, first of all, that he's player. He's tagged as player, which is awesome. Let's go down here, and we have to fill in this public value, so our player text. Our player text is under our canvas. It's under our text score, I think, so let's dump that in there. Awesome. And we need to update anything else? I don't think so. Star, anything in here? I don't think I had any public values. Yeah, I do. If I wanted to change the value, I could change it. Okay, so that's all we really should need to do. Once I hit run, we're going to be able to pick up the star. So let's do it. Let's hit play. All right, there's my star. Let's go get it. Boom, a value of 1. Pretty sweet. And guys, that should show you how quickly, let me move this over because it's going to bother me. These scripts are here. Let's put our scripts in here. Oh, I hate it when it does this. Why do you keep bringing that screen up? Don't bring that screen up. Don't do it. Don't do All right. All right, guys. So now that we see how easy that is, I hope it is very evident that you could make any pickup or any power-up utilizing this very modular method, right? You store your appropriate functionality on a central location. You allow that central location to do whatever it needs to do. If I wanted to make the star a speed boost, for example, I could have a public accessor function that allows me to adjust the movement speed of my character. That's it, right? Everything works the same. It's very, very modular in nature. Create my pickup, add in that access function on my central location, and access that particular function. That is the entirety of the idea of pickups. Super easy to add, so add them into your game, guys. Add them into your games. Once I'm done, of course, I'm going to add them into my prefab, so I already have a star here. We'll grab star base, we'll drag star base in, and we will add it. Oh yeah, this star was from the other videos. We'll add star base in here. Give it a better name than star base. Call it like star base pickup or something like that so you know what it is. And now I can add these guys anywhere I want in the scene. So let's add our star base there so I can get 2 points. Boop. Let's get ourselves 2 points. All right, you put this where you want to. Later on, of course, you're going to want to add animation and everything else to make sure that this is something noticeable. For now, all we're doing is destroying it. All right, so there we go. Play. We've got ourselves prefabs now. Pick up 1, pick up 2. Look at all those points. I'm rolling in star points. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Easy stuff. I'm hoping you guys are moving along with your game. I'm hoping my students are moving along with their game. My students are currently working on a infinite runner style side-scrolling type thing where they have to add pickups. So students, watch this video. It's super easy. All right, guys, thumbs up, thumbs down, comments down below, and if you haven't done so, please take a few seconds to subscribe. Have yourselves a wonderful day, everyone.